The task I shall be completing today is recreating a Funko Pop of Cat Noir from one of my TV shows called Miraculous Ladybug. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to shape the ball into a head. The software I'm using for this is called Mesh Mixer. It's really cool. It's kind of like virtual clay, which makes it hard to be accurate, but you can do a lot of cool things that you can't do when you're limited by blocks. So the first thing I did was I created my headspace and now I'm adding the mask to it. So usually my process for creating details is just to do a very rough drawing of it and then smooth it out over time. You can see here, this is what it looked like when I finished smoothing it. Now I'm going to add the eyes. This was a difficult process because right now I'm just trying to bubble it outwards, which makes it too round. So I ended up flattening it down after. Yep. So now I'm going to add the hair. This was probably the hardest part just because it's so temperamental and there's so much hair to add. So I'm adding more of his locks. I was going to say luscious locks, but that's too much for me. Yep. Here we go. I had to cut a lot of this out. So this took me about 2 hours to complete the head, and I cut it down to about 3 minutes of footage. So yeah, I'm adding the hair on the sides. To do this, I'm just grabbing and then pulling it downwards. While Mesh Mixer is really good for this sort of thing, I couldn't do this in my previous software that I used, Shaper 3D, because it's just too rigid. And there we go. I add one ear and I add the back hair. And I add the second ear now. And this is my final look. I also add the nose a bit earlier, hoping the side profile looks good. And here we go. This is the head. Now to print it, I want to flatten off the base so it didn't print jagged. So I'm just going to scale it down. And this is going back into the Shaper 3D. And here I'm not building anything, I'm just rigidly cutting it down, which is what this app is good for. So the first thing I'm going to do is just I want to measure it to make sure my height is correct. I'm going to cut out the bottom flat bit using a rectangle and then subtracting it from the shape. And I'm going to add, because this would take up a lot of plastic to make, I'm going to hollow it out a bit to help it be easier to make, which is just adding a hole. And I'm going to add this like a little lid so I can stick it in so you can't tell it's hollow on the inside. And I added a rectangular box, and this is the final product. Now it's time for the body. This took the majority of the time. So to do this, I'm going to do the same thing I did before, go into Mesh Mixer, start with a sphere, and then round it out and slowly create the body shape. So now I'm going to add the arms to each side. This is like a shoulder joint. Here you can see me doing the other side. And I'm slowly pulling out the arms. The key is to go very slowly so you can preserve the vertices of the triangles, because basically every shape is just made up of triangles. You can see later in the video, I show you the vertices mode, but you have to be careful you're not extruding everything, because then you'll get not enough surface area for triangles. Here I'm adding the legs. It looks a bit rough now, but I promise you'll get better. Adding the feet, just smoothing everything out. Yep, making the feet flat. I was going to do what I did before and go back into the other software and flatten everything out, but this is a good base work to start. Here I'm adding the belt. So like similarly with the mask, I just start by making rough shape outlines and then when I flatten it out and clean it up. Yep, I decided to make it 2 things wide. And yep, here I'm just flattening out to make sure it looks smooth and clean. And I like it. Now I'm adding the belt buckle to the back of the cat noir body. And here, this is me trying to make the tail. So what I did for this is the problem I was telling you about before, how there's not enough vertices for the triangles, so it gets really thin like this. And I realized I had to go all the way back and restart it. This is for the tail. Yep, and here's the final product, just smoothing it out a bit. Yep, and now this is when we go into so you can see here, it's just a whole bunch of triangular shapes that makes up the whole thing. And here I'm just trying to make it easier for the 3D printer to process. So I'm going to try to remove some of the triangle shapes, smoothing it out. This will also help clean it up and smooth it out so it's less bumpy. To add the bell, I just added a sphere to the shape and just put it on. And here I made the fingers, smoothing them out, making the grip hand for the bar, adding the bar, and I'm just going to subtract the bar from the shape so I can get the rounded edges to it that I want. There we go. Nice and clean. And here is the final product. I like this better than the head. I think it's a bit cleaner. I plan on cleaning up the belt when I go to the Shaper app. Here's the Shaper app. So when I add it in, takes a bit, move it over, remove, flatten out the feet like I did before. I added a belt buckle in just to make it cleaner. And because to print this, imagine when you're trying to print this, how is it going to print the fingers? It can't just magically spawn plastic. So I'm going to add some base supports to it, which is what this is. So basically this is a way that I can build up to get the clean fingers without having to magically create them. Like, think about a 3D printer, it goes levels. What level can it get to print that? So I add base supports to things that it can't teleport to, which are like the arms, the legs, and the tail. And I also added a base support for the top of it. And here's the final product, which is I printed. So after I printed it, I glued it together using epoxy, and then I painted it and sprayed a varnishy finish onto it, and here's the final product. I hope you enjoyed. This was super fun to make, and tune in next Thursday for my next video.